The 8th grade school day was sweltering hot, and James was fast asleep on his desk. Even in sleep, he muttered unintelligibly, fingers twitching and brow furrowing. His teacher didn't bother to wake him, fearing the behavior that would surely ensue. James was a strange child, and was often the victim of relentless bullying and teasing. The mutterings grew louder, until some of his fellow classmates shot him nervous sideways glances. He had been diagnosed with schizophrenia at a very young age, it being the closest possible explanation for the things he heard and saw. Even though the simple explanation brought comfort to those who knew him, it was obvious that the diagnosis was a mere guess. The doctors had been utterly confused by James. There was a sort of far-broken bar unsettling feeling about him. Something inexplicable. A sort of far-broken bar staticky feeling. He never smiled, and spent most of his time staring and whispering. He had fits sometimes, body seizing and eyes rolling. The doctors diagnosed him with epilepsy soon after the first seizure, but they knew that wasn't quite right either. After an incredibly dull lesson on square roots, class ended. With the rusty ting of the afternoon bell, James awoke, sitting straight up in his chair with a hiss. He hated sleeping in class. Today was the 27th of May, and he couldn't afford to sleep. He couldn't afford to miss the opening. Robotically, James hoisted his bag over his shoulder and walked out of the classroom, blank eyes flickering from student to student, looking for the twins. He didn't have to wait long. The classroom's exit suddenly darkened, blocked by two hulking figures. They were the school's two largest and most cowardly bullies, Jacob and Hunter. The pair were twins, equally rich in wealth and stupidity. "Why the rush, Jamie?" said Hunter with a smirk. They always called him by that infuriating pet name. James merely watched, cocking his head. "Off to see the ghosts?" mocked Jacob. "Little shit. Did you forget? You owe us allowance," he finished, holding out his grubby hand expectantly. James never had money, and the twins knew it. His failure to pay was merely an excuse for them to beat him. But, this time was different. The twins could feel it, a certain broken bar staticky feeling, brewing in the air. James could feel it too. It was time. The small, minuscule window of opportunity had arrived. A chance to turn the tables. A chance to reverse the curse. He grinned, an unsettling sight. The twins had never seen him do such a thing before, and they stepped forward, balling their meaty fists in fear. "No funny business, Jamie. Remember what happened last time you tried to scare us? Wasn't so fun, was it?" Hunter teased, lifting his chin with pride. The jab had the opposite effect, and James's horrific smile grew wider. He remembered that time clearer than day. It had almost worked, and was worth the brutal beating he'd gotten afterward. The staticky feeling grew more intense, urging him to hurry. Holding up his hands in submission, he said something entirely unexpected. "I have the money," James said with a gleeful giggle, pointing outside, past the schoolyard. The unsettling grin stayed plastered on his face. The twins narrowed their eyes in unison. "Follow me," James giggled, now practically jumping in excitement. The pair stepped aside, following James as he stumbled down the stairs. He beckoned once again, giggling raspily. Hunter and Jacob followed, smirking. They gave each other a knowing look. The pair was 10 times stronger than him. If there was money, they'd take it. If there wasn't, they'd have fun. Simple as that. Wherever James took them, it wouldn't give him an advantage big enough to prevent them from taking what they wanted. They strode after James, hardly caring as he walked miles past the school, past the suburbs, and into a large, abandoned wheat field. It was this moment when the two bullies realized something was off. The itchy wheat rubbed against their skin, leaving golden hairs covering their shorts and t-shirts. They could hardly see James any longer. The stalks were uncharacteristically tall, and seemed to grow taller the farther they walked. The staticky feeling grew. making the hair stand up on their necks. An unsettling chill settled on the pair, despite the heat of the day. Jacob started to panic, realizing that James had gone missing. "We said no funny business, James," Jacob shouted, tearing through wheat stalks, trying to find James. Hunter was more cautious, and carefully tiptoed through the field, trying to find an explanation for the supernatural feeling which had enshrouded the area. Much farther in the field, James' grin widened, making his face hurt. They felt it too, he thought. The static. The scratchy, haunting feeling. The voices would surely come next. He'd done it. Jacob and Hunter searched, panic increasing. It wasn't until the first voice rang out, however, that they truly began to lose their minds. A shriek sounded, making their ears ring. The two stopped in unison, trying to find the source of the noise. When there appeared to be none, the two went berserk, voices of all sorts swirling in their heads. "James," yelled Hunter. "James, where are you?" screamed Jacob, insides curdling in fear. A new voice caressed his ear. "Hello, visitor. Has James brought you? Good for him. Good for him. I always liked that kid." The voice cackled. Possessed by pure terror and adrenaline, Jacob blindly sprinted, running faster than he ever had before. "Jacob, wait!" cried Hunter, tearing after his twin. After what could have been hours, or possibly only seconds, they reached a small, circular dirt clearing. Panting, scared, and covered in itchy wheat, the pair was furious, especially when they saw a clean and complacent James sitting cross-legged in the middle of the clearing, fingers tapping a short and impatient rhythm. "Late, late, 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 late," muttered James, now twiddling his thumbs. Enraged, Jacob ran at him, scratching shoes, making red puffs of dirt. Then, just as Jacob drew back a fist, James opened his mouth, his tongue lolling and pitch black. Jacob stumbled back to his twin, repulsed. "Now, dear, I think they're actually slightly early," said James. But, the voice wasn't his. It was an old, scratchy woman's voice. "Bah! Might as well get the whole thing over with," said a second voice, this time the deep sound of a man. "Take? Which take?" muttered another, this time James' own voice. "Now, James, you know how to check," said the woman again. Hunter and Jacob stood, frozen, watching James' mouth in horror and fascination. Then, there was a horrible ripping noise, and Jacob and Hunter howled, clutching their arms. The flesh on their left forearm had been, well, unzipped. But instead of blood, all that oozed out of the wounds was a thick, muddy substance. Hunter's was a sickly, grotesque mustard yellow, and he stared at it, terrified and transfixed as it dripped down his arm. But, Jacob on the other hand, began to shriek. His wound oozed black. A frightful, horrendous black, which crawled and dripped like hundreds of newborn spiders. "There you have it, James dear. It's him," the crone said. She clucked her tongue. "Good thing you got him in time. It's so rare to find a specimen like this one on time," she finished. Then, with a sigh, James collapsed, mouth shutting. The wounds on Hunter and Jacob's arms disappeared with a dark flash. "What did she mean, Hunt? What does she mean, it's me? What do we do?" Jacob babbled, panicking. Then, behind them, James began to convulse. His eyes rolled back in his head, the red veins sharply contrasting against his ghostly pale face. He collapsed to the ground, body jerking. Then began the screams. Oh, the screams. They were as high-pitched as a whistle, and as freakish as a pig's squeal. I don't what do we stuttered Hunt, unable to get a hold of himself. The staticky sensation that had shrouded the field seemed to grow stronger, until it was an audible buzzing. Hunter and Jacob swatted at their ears, panic overcoming their senses. They were so panicked, in fact, that they didn't notice as James's body went limp. They didn't notice as James stood, like a puppet on strings, and raised a trembling hand in Jacob's direction. They didn't notice until a wailing, horrid shriek of 1,000 voices sounded. "Free!" screeched James, pointing at Jacob, eyes and face whiter than a sheet. The static turned to a roar, and Jacob screamed. He screamed, and kept screaming. He fell to his knees, begging, gabbling unintelligibly. All Hunter could do was stare in horror. Time stood still as James froze, a horrifyingly triumphant expression pressed into his face. Thick, dark liquid began to pour out of James's mouth, trailing down his shirt and pooling in the clearing. He retched, and more fluid poured. The sickly black liquid didn't end, continuing around the dirt trail. It boiled, burning the edges of the clearing, but couldn't seem to pass the soil of the circle. Coming to his senses, Hunter yelped, jumping into the cover of the wheat. He moved to grab Jacob's arm, but quickly yanked his hand back. Jacob's skin was burning hot, at least 150 degrees. So, all Hunter could do was watch yet again as the dark puddle reached Jacob. Slowly, it crept up his shirt, soaking his body. It burned, ignoring Jacob's pitiful whimpers as it pooled in his mouth. He swallowed, and swallowed, and swallowed, until there was no black left. And, just as the last drop disappeared down Jacob's throat, the two in the clearing collapsed. Hunter cried out, running through the field. Tears burned in his eyes, and he hardly noticed as he sprinted for at least a mile to the twins' house. It's Jacob," Hunter blubbered, sobbing. His parents, shocked at the display, tried to calm him. The only thing they were able to get out of him were a few words. He repeated them over and over. Jacob. Burn. James. Voices. Liquid. James. Voices. Liquid. Burn. Jacob. Now hysterical, Hunter's father and mother told him to lead them to Jacob. He did, leading them back to the innocent golden field. The window had passed, and the staticky feeling and the voices were gone. Upon seeing the field once again, Hunter screamed, and took off in the opposite direction. Exchanging terrified looks, the pair trudged through the wheat until they found the clearing. The mother shrieked, her voice carrying across the wheat field. There lay Jacob, asleep, muttering and twitching. James knelt next to him, patting his back and whispering soothing words. "How did he get this far?" screamed Jacob's mother, collapsing on her knees. Jacob's dad ran out of the field, undoubtedly trying to find help. "I told him, with his epilepsy and all, that he wasn't to leave school without an adult." I can't believe this," she said shakily, looking at James. James stood, looking ashamed. "I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have let him get far. I sent Hunter to get help, but he started, looking mournful. Don't worry dear, I'm glad you tried to help. You can go home now, I've got it from here," she finished, dismissing him with a wave. He stayed, however, watching Jacob mutter nonsense and convulse with an air of confusion. He stayed all the way until the ambulance came, where he caught a ride back home. His parents embraced him immediately, crowing with pride over his heroic actions. He took their praises in stride. But, once he was alone, he sat, furrowing his brow. He couldn't remember the last 3 hours. He couldn't remember much of anything, really. Only his friend group, soccer practices, and birthdays. Important things. Had he hit his head? Feeling around his hair, he found the small, circular bruise that was beginning to appear from his violent seizure. Of course, however, he had forgotten the occurrence. Relived, he stood. Yes, that must have been it. He'd hit his head. Shaking off the panic that had begun to rise, he returned to the kitchen and the happy embraces of his family. The only individual who remembered the entirety of the situation was the unfortunate Hunter. He lost his mind in the following years, becoming almost as utterly insane as his twin. The unfortunate pair, they were called, recipients of pity wherever they went. James, meanwhile, lived the life of a normal boy. The only remnant of the past he had lived was the black, thick blood which pumped through his veins, freed of its inhabitants but inescapable. Aaron walks behind his real estate agent as he shows him the whole house. The house is 2 spacious floors, 24 hours water and electricity, and has a beautiful lawn. As Aaron walks through the house, he thinks the rent is affordable and the place is amazing. At the end of the tour, Aaron's agent brings him to one final room at the far end of the house on the ground floor. "Why is this room empty?" Aaron asks curiously. "Well, you see, since you are on a limited budget and you requested to find a spacious house, and you have already rejected 12 previous houses, this is the best I could do for you," the agent replied. "Mike, I know my budget and how many houses I rejected. What I am asking is why this room in the entire house is empty. I'm getting an entire furnished house except for this one room. Mr. Aaron, you are not getting the entire house." Broken bar. Aaron makes a confused face at Mike. Broken bar. "You will get the first floor of the house and this floor is already rented out." "What?" Aaron is baffled by this revelation. "Look, this is your last resort because after this there aren't any more houses which come under your budget and the other renter doesn't mind sharing either." "I mind. I can't share a house. What if the other person is a criminal? All criminal records, medical records and even academic records of the other renter have been thoroughly checked. So the decision is yours, you want it or not." Aaron and Mike are still standing in the empty room. He thinks over the offer one more time and decides it's better than a small apartment or a shabby house in a bad neighborhood. "This is my last option?" Aaron reluctantly asks. "Yes, or you could pick one of the previous places." "Fine, I'll take it. Give me the contract and the lease. Also, what is this room?" A broken bar. "In the original house plan this was the guest room, away from the family, giving the guest privacy. This comes under the other renters area. The areas you will be sharing are the lawn and the balcony. You will be getting separate bills for both water and electricity, but the gas bill is shared and both have separate kitchens as well." Mike goes on and on about the specifics. Aaron only half pays attention. Once the lease and the contract is signed, Aaron and Mike part ways. Aaron returns to his hotel room for the evening to pack his clothes and any valuables he has. He spends the night and in the morning he heads to the reception where he pays for the last few weeks and clears his tab. Once outside the hotel, the Uber he called is waiting for him. Unexpectedly, the Uber only takes him halfway because the car has a flat tire. Aaron walks the rest of the way and reaches his new home in 30 minutes. Once inside the house, Aaron notices bags and boxes all over the ground floor, signaling the other renter's presence. Aaron ignored the boxes and made his way to his part of the house. The first floor had 2 bedrooms, each having their own bathrooms, a balcony looking over the lush lawn and a lounge area, all of which came fully furnished. This part of the house was designed exactly to Aaron's taste, with dark grey to black matted walls and leather furniture. Aaron placed his clothes in the room he preferred and made the other bedroom into his study. After he is done with his work, he heads to the kitchen and heats up the frozen food he ordered. Around 11 p.m. Aaron headed to his room, and once inside he closed the door and locked it. 2 hours later he heard a knock on the door, but when he opened the door he found a small plush doll and a note lying on the ground. He picked up the doll and the note. The doll was dirty but also cute, and then read the note. "Dear neighbor. Hello. I would like to present you with a gift to show there is no hostility from my side. I also want to welcome you. I hope we can live together in peace. Hope you like the gift." His name is Josh. Aaron threw the note in the bin but kept the doll. He washed the doll and dried it so it would not look dirty and kept it on his nightstand. And from then on Aaron would keep Josh next to him all the time, in his study, in the kitchen, and even when watching TV. He hadn't seen his neighbor ever since he moved, but always received notes from time to time. Few months later Aaron woke up in the middle of the freezing night to the sound of his TV. He got up to see and found the TV was on and Josh sat in front of it. Aaron closed the TV and turned to get Josh, but it wasn't there anymore. He looked everywhere in the lounge and the kitchen, but Josh wasn't there either. Suddenly he felt drawn towards his room and he found Josh on the nightstand. "I must be dreaming," Aaron said to himself out loud. After that night Josh would go missing and then appear somewhere else, and this worried Aaron a lot. Once Aaron had put Josh in the bedroom and was working in his study on some documents. Aaron had walked away from the desk to retrieve a file from the file cabinet, and on his return he saw Josh on his desk. After that Aaron had had enough and went to see his neighbor with Josh clutched in his hands. Aaron checked all the rooms, but there was no sign of the other renter or a sign that anyone actually lived there. Aaron had one last room to check, the guest room. He walked towards the door slowly as if expecting someone to jump at him. This part of the floor got colder and colder by every step he took. The hand in which he had Josh turned as cold as ice, but he didn't let go of Josh. Once at the door Aaron called out, "Hello, hey neighbor." His voice cracked under the low temperature. He touched the doorknob and the door flew open. He heard a little boy's voice, inaudible whispers. "Hey, I'm a broken bar kid, a broken bar. Are your parents home? I need to speak with them," Aaron said calmly so as not to scare the boy. "I'm not a boy, silly. But come in and please join my tea party," the little girl's voice said. "I never said you were a boy." He seemed confused by the situation. The room was dark, like it was painted black. Aaron takes another few steps into the room. "But you were thinking about it, weren't you? Just like when you were exposing your boss, but you didn't all the time when you were ready to kill your brother because he held you back all the time in a broken bar." The voice echoed. "Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Did I hurt little Ronnie?" All the color drains away from Aaron's face as soon as he hears his nickname, a name no one can call him, not anymore. "I'm leaving." Aaron breaks into a run towards the door, but before he could reach it, it slams shut. He bangs on the door over and over again and screams at the top of his lunges, but all in vain. "Little Ronnie, come to me." A dark figure steps out of the darkness. Its face is covered with long black hair and only one of its eyes is visible. "Little Ronnie, come to me." The figure steps closer and Aaron turns around to face it. "Stay away. Don't come near me." He looked the figure in the eye and in panic threw Josh at it. Josh landed on the figure's unseen face and didn't fall off. "What is this, a little doll?" The figure tried to take the doll off its face but couldn't. "I won't let you," was a tiny voice, but it stopped the figure. "You will not hurt him." The voice grew louder. In a matter of seconds, in front of Aaron, Josh fell and another figure appeared. This figure was lighter and had a soft aura and proceeded to hold the dark figure away from Aaron. Josh turned his head slightly and said, "Run." Aaron had managed to open the door and bolted. Few minutes of running and he would be outside, but he ended up in the same room again. Aaron tries again, but to no use. He keeps ending up in the same room. After 10 tries Aaron has given up and finally turns to see what has happened to Josh and the dark figure. Josh is no longer the soft aura he first saw but has turned dark just like the other figure. "Aaron, stay with me," Josh says, with empty eyes. "Please let me go," Aaron begs, but he has been pushed into a corner. Both Josh and the dark figure tower over him. 7 months later, Mike and a woman in her mid-20s stand in the guest room. "Okay, so this is the guest room, but it's not part of the area I rent. Am I correct?" The woman asks politely. "Yes. That is correct." "Well, I'm in love with this house. Let's sign the contract." The woman moves in the next day and at night finds a pair of dolls and a note at her bedroom door. The note says, "Hello neighbor, I welcome you with a gift. This is Josh and Aaron, I hope you like them." The woman takes the dolls into her room and places them on the nightstand. While she prepares for bed, the doll's head turns to face her. The sounds will just never stop. The sound of the leaves dancing to the wind's rhythm, the sound of various birds chirping, the sound of the cold wind rushing its way, and the sound of the mighty Alacananda flowing at her own pace. Nature has made a pact with us to always keep the richness of her important presence alive. Why would the sounds stop? I breathe in the fresh, crisp air with each breath I take. I realize the essence of simplicity. I realize the need to connect with nature. I can feel the air go in from my nasal cavity, creating a tingling sensation, into my windpipe and into the lungs. Lungs. My lungs feel like young flowers receiving the sun rays that will help them bloom. I hear another sound. No, it's not from nature. It's from the engine. I stop my bike on the side to check. It has overheated and isn't turning on. The nearest village is still 43 kilometers afar. There is not a soul here. Who do I ask for help? Where do I go? It is going to get darker in 3 hours. Within then I need to secure myself. I must find shelter from this harsh weather and escape the mouths of hungry carnivores. Not seeing any other option, I hold the handle of my bike and start pushing it along with me while I walk. The evening birds are singing their final chorus of the day. Tall green trees, the sound of the now furious river, the birds' diminishing sounds, and my bike are the only companions of mine in this quest of finding shelter. I walk and I walk, still not a soul in sight. Something moves in the bushes behind me. It is quick. I hear a low growl. Alarmed, I slowly take a few steps back and try to stay as still as possible. I can sense that even the animal is scared. It slows as it nears the ends of the bushes and emerges out of the bushes proudly. It is a vulpes. A cub. They are the subspecies of the Himalayan fox, Vulpes griffithii. It was once seen in Bujani and Kalia top areas of Mansyari. They don't come down near human civilization unless they have a hint of fresh meat. It looks at me. I try harder to stay still. It isn't completely a young cub, it's a little grown and has its set of teeth. It could tear a piece of flesh right out of me. There's only a gap of around 7 feet between us. I think it didn't sense any danger, so it sniffs a couple of times before cautiously moving forward to cross the road. Stops and looks around for any other human traces. There aren't any vehicles around here. Maybe about 6 vehicles pass in an hour, if in the evening hardly 2. It happily crosses the street, jumps onto the other side, and runs away into the wild. I'm thankful for being alive. It is getting colder. I pull out a muffler and gloves and put them on. I'm starting to get scared now. I'm in the middle of a road surrounded by extreme wilderness. The owls are hooting in the distance and it is dark enough to need light now. I take out my head torch and go step by step. I finally see a house. A tiny house on the edge of the tiny hill to my right. I park my bike below the tree at the start of the cliff, wear my backpack and look around to make sure no one is watching. There's a man-made path that leads me directly to the front door of the house. It's a tiny house made of bricks, unpainted and old. Plastic sheets have been put on the roof. The roof spreads over the house to extend its shelter to all 4 sides. At the entrance, there is a bulb. There is no doorbell, so I knock softly 3 times. No answer. I knock again. No answer. How am I going to spend the night all alone in this wild? I simply sit below the extended roof and decide to rest here because I had no other option. I lay my backpack on the floor and sit. The dried cement is extremely cold and rough. Now, I am hungry. I search my bag to find 2 protein bars. I rip the covers and put it into my mouth. I feel a little better. I notice the window on the wall beside me on the far left. I now notice 2 eyes peeping from them. I thought no one was home. Why were they staring at me instead of opening the door? Were they scared of me? I stare back at them. I get up and awkwardly walk towards the window. They're startled. I bend down to match their eye level. Their eyes are filled with innocence and terror. She's a girl, I realize. I sign with my hand that I'm cold and that she could open the door so we could speak. She doesn't respond. She was only staring at me in wonder who or what I was doing here at this hour. I go back to my place, fold my knees and arms and rest my head on my knees. After about 10 minutes I hear the door open. I lift my head up and see her asking me to come. What a relief. I happily march to the door with the backpack and stand outside the door, ready to answer her questions. Surprisingly, she doesn't ask me anything. She welcomes me into the house and softly whispers. "You have to leave at sunrise tomorrow," she says, trying to be authoritative. I nod gratefully. At least I had a place to stay. There's a hall the size of a room, the left corner is divided as the kitchen and on the right corner is a bedspread. I try to search for any extensions or extra rooms or even a bathroom. There are none. I keep my backpack aside and look at her. Now that there's light I can see her properly. She's very young, about 13 years old. She has a round face with a long nose and complimenting eyes. Her long thick hair is braided with oil. She's standing there crossing her arms behind her back and looking down at her feet. I don't see anyone else in this house. Only her. "Do you live all by yourself?" I ask. She nods her head very slowly as if she was forced to answer. How can such a young girl live all by herself in the middle of the woods? There are no other people around and no means of communication or entertainment. I look at her with pity. "You don't have to pity me," she raises her voice. "I'm not as scared of you or anyone for that matter. I know how to fight, so don't you dare do anything to me. And if you think about stealing, you don't have to waste your time because there's nothing in this house." I giggle and say, "You don't have to worry about all that. I just need shelter for the night. My bike broke down on the way and the village is really far away. I'll go in search of a mechanic tomorrow morning. Thank you for letting me stay." Her eyes were widened. She relaxed and didn't hide the fact that she was thrilled and surprised. "Didi, sister, you can ride a bike?" "Yes, I can." "How? Does everyone approve it?" "I don't need anyone's approval to ride a bike, you broken bar. What's your name?" "Bowley." "We don't need anyone's approval to do the things we love, Bowley. We're just not supposed to hurt anyone." There's a friendly smile on her face. She likes bikes, I guess. I smile back at her. "Can I have a glass of water, and can I also cook something for myself? I'm starving," I ask. "You don't have to cook, Didi. I had made extra roti and dal today hoping my brothers would come back home. You can have their share. Please go freshen up, I'll serve the food for you." "Brothers?" Beauty broken bar, but she had nodded her head when I had asked her if she lives alone. I assume she was shy and don't suspect her. She isn't shy or scared of me anymore. She goes past me, I follow her to a back door. It opens into a vast garden. In the middle of the garden is a small room, which I presume is the bathroom. She stretches her hand in that direction and I go. The water is freezing cold. I'd rather skip washing up, but my hands were all dirty and I had to clean them. I quickly pour the water onto my hands. I come out into the dark and try to search for a napkin. There's another room at the end of the garden. The lights inside are on. Was it another house? Or perhaps their storeroom? I walk towards it to turn the lights off. As I near it I can smell something rotten. Not the smell of fruits or vegetables rotting, but of meat. Maybe it's a storehouse for meat. I have 10 steps till the door. "Dinner is ready." "Where are you headed?" Bowley screams. I'm a little embarrassed for trespassing further into her garden. I return to the warmth of her house and dinner, which has a delicious aroma. I thank her for the food and sit down. "So, where are your brothers that you were hoping them to come?" I ask as I take my 4th roti. Without hesitation, she shares. "It's a long story, Didi. As you know, the nearest village is about 43 kilometers from here. To even have one day's food, we need to go to the village to sell our fruits and earn the money to buy groceries. But to buy groceries we have to go to the town that is 20 kilometers from there." She had a tone of irritation and anger. "It would have been easier if we had some vehicle, but we can't afford it. So we need to walk the 43 kilometers barefoot with our fruits, sell them, And if we are lucky we find a bus that's willing to drop us to the town in exchange for half a kilograms of rice because we can't waste our money by paying him. She pauses and asks me if I need anything else. I had 7 rotis and was full. But I had forgotten about Bowley. I'm so sorry Bowley. I finished the rotis without even considering if you had eaten or not. It is okay Didi, we will have our share of a complete meal tomorrow, she faintly grinned. I think her brothers were coming back tomorrow. I urge her to continue her story. My mother had died after giving birth to me in this very room. My father had lost his job as a driver as tourists now preferred rented cars which they could drive themselves. We grow fruits like hisan, timala, kifl, and plum in the garden behind which fetch us a fortune when sold to tourists in the town. Although we produce a large and fresh amount of fruits, half the fruits would have rotten by the time we reach the village on foot, hence we get only half the actual profit. My father was attacked by a wild animal a few months ago and since then my brothers have taken the responsibility of providing food. I feel bad for them. Is there any way I can help them? Probably by not wasting our food. We waste food like it's in great produce when the truth is there are so many people struggling to even have 1 hour's food. I pat her head and say, "That's sad, Bowley. But don't lose hope. Hold on to it. There's always a way out. I wish you 3 all the luck." She sadly nods and bends her head. While lifting her head up her focus shifts to the back door which causes her to smile. I turn around to see nothing. We stare into the nothingness for a while. Tomorrow I have something I want to show you. I think you'll really like it. Be ready within 6. Good night, she says and hands me a bedsheet. What could she possibly want to show me? I can't think anymore as my exhaustion was blocking them. I fall asleep instantly. Is it already 6? I've been asleep for hardly 2 hours. Bowley is waiting for me to get ready. She is energetic and I can see a sort of momentary happiness in her eyes. She waits for me until I freshen up. She is standing in the garden looking at the sky like she'd found new hope. She doesn't talk much and leads the way. We go past the storehouse. The smell has worsened. There's a path that leads to the top of the hill adjacent to their house. What is it that she wants to show me? The hill is tall. It will take maybe an hour to climb up. I can't hear any early birds chirping even though it's 6. Is it really 6? I had no way to know. My watch was in the house. We take a right. A small bridge connects this side of the hill to the other mainland over the Alakananda River. I can't enjoy the view as it is still completely dark. I follow Bowley to the other side and she plainly says, "Just a little further." I sigh and tag along frustrated not knowing where she was taking me. 2 hours of continuous walking in the cold has drained my energy. The sun's beginning to rise. Are we there yet? I see faint trays falling onto the mountains in view. She stops. I stop. It's the end of the hill. She doesn't utter anything. Simply lets me be. The view, although not completely visible yet, is worth waiting for. I stand on the edge of the hill taking in the fresh air and mental sketches when I feel numerous hands on my back. Before I have any chance to react, I fall off the edge. The sun is out. I can feel her warmth. My body is weak. I try to open my eyes, I can't. I clutch the ground beside me and lie still. A voice nears my ear, a voice that I know. A voice that now sounds confident and satisfied. The voice whispers into my ears. "We will have our share of a complete meal today, Didi." Ryan laid on the bed in the empty guest room. It had nothing in it except for a wall clock and the bed. He was lost in the book he was reading, but the doorbell pulled him out of the endless depth of the engaging story. Who could that be? He thought as he walked up to the front door. He proceeded to unlock the door and was frozen when he saw a girl standing in front of him. She looked scared, and her teary eyes begged for help. "You have to save me, please. They're after me." she said just before she fell on his shoulder. Ryan was perplexed. It was almost midnight, and that stranger had fallen unconscious. He had no choice, so he carried the girl in the guest room. The bruises on her arms revealed themselves as the blood began escaping from the fresh wound on her head. He hurried to the kitchen and brought a cup of water. The girl's eyelashes fluttered as the water was sprinkled on her face. She gasped as she sat up with a jerk. "What's your name? And how did you get injured?" he inquired. "I'm Leah," she answered, her eyes unleashing a tsunami. "They've killed my parents, and now it's my turn." "Do you know who they are?" "No." She wiped her tears. "I'm Ryan, by the way. And I should get some Band-Aid." "Thanks for letting me in, Ryan." "Don't mention it." He stood up and ordered his legs to move. "Though you shouldn't let strangers into your house. Especially when you're home alone." "How did you know I'm home alone? I don't see anyone else except you." "Touch a tilde copyright," he said as he stepped towards the door. "Well, you needed help, didn't you? That's why I brought you inside." "Bold of you to assume that I needed help," she mumbled. The first aid kit rested on the chair as Ryan filled a glass with water and plopped 2 ice cubes in it. He clutched the aid kit while holding the glass in his other hand. The lights flickered on and off and made him uneasy. He put the glass on the table as he reached for the switch. Off, on. Off, on. The lights went back to normal. Ryan smiled at his stupidity and at the fact that he was fearful for a bit. He proceeded back to the guest room and noticed Leah staring at him. "You want water?" he questioned. "Yes, please." Their fingers brushed as she took the glass from him. "Your hands are cold," he stated. "They are?" she said after she gulped down all the water in one go. Ryan sprinted to his room and gripped the blanket. The stench of rotting fish filled his nostrils on his way back to the guest room. He handed Leah the blanket and walked towards the window. Twinkling stars searched for the moon, but it hid in the clouds. The darkness had taken over the forest, a beautiful land full of different creatures. The roads were silent as if they would get punished if they allowed a single car to run over them. The disagreeable smell of the rotting fish was still present in the atmosphere. Ryan couldn't understand where that smell was coming from. Thinking that there might be a dead rodent, he looked under the bed. But there was nothing. "Do you smell something?" he queried. Nothing at all." "Okay, that's weird because—" The doorbell interrupted him. Ryan told Leah not to come with him, but she insisted. She encouraged him to peek through the peephole before opening the door. He peeked. 2 men were standing there. "They're the people who killed my family," she said, stepping a few inches back. Ryan's body trembled with terror, but he built up the courage and took Leah to the kitchen. He frantically searched for his phone but failed to find it. Leah stood there in silence and observed everything he did. Ryan grasped 2 knives from the kitchen cabinets, handing one of them to Leah. Then he took her to his room and gave her the baseball bat. They heard a loud burst which indicated that someone had broken into the house. They heard footsteps approaching. They both stood there, ready for whoever was coming for them. The footsteps came closer, and closer, and closer. And then they stopped. Ryan and Leah stood there for a while, ready to strike, but it felt like the men had disappeared. When Ryan was sure that there was no one standing outside, he peeked out, his knife ready in his hand just in case someone pops up. But nobody did. He turned around and beckoned Leah over. But as she came out, someone began shooting black blobs of paint. The culprit was invisible. They rushed back into the room and shut the door. Leah was calm, as if she had no problem in dying, while Ryan was utterly horrified. They again heard the sound of footsteps progressing towards the room. They planned to stand behind the door and launch at whoever comes in. The door slowly opened, making a squeaking noise. The smell of dead rats arose, making Ryan want to puke. The lights have again begun to flicker as the creature crawled inside the room. It looked like a pile of jet black meat. The two different-sized eyes gazed at Ryan. Its mouth wide open as the long tongue moistened its sharp teeth that were too large to fit in its mouth. Its long human-like legs curled up and almost reached its mouth. A black inky substance dripped from its eyes. Its arms that had sharp claws at the end advanced toward Ryan. He was scared. Very scared. He stabbed its hand with his knife. The creature absorbed the blade in his hand and spat out a black blob. It tilted its head and peered at the black substance which was releasing reddish smoke. Leah slowly forwarded towards its head. As the creature was busy inspecting the smoke, Leah smashed the baseball bat on its head. It screeched. Ryan pounced on its hand as he tried to reach Leah. The creature turned around and got smacked on his face by the door. The pile of black meat fell to the ground. Ryan leapt to the door but was seized by the creature's hand. It dragged Ryan towards its mouth. Ryan struggled to free himself from its grasp. He firmly held onto the door. The monstrous being refused to let him go even after he successfully ejected various kicks at him. Leah hurled the frying pan towards the creature's head which she had brought from the kitchen. It let go of Ryan's foot as he snarled in pain. They both hastened to the kitchen but caught another black creature wandering around in it. Ryan locked the door and trapped it inside. They raced to the lounge as it was the nearest place and hid behind a sofa. "What is happening?" Ryan shouted, full of rage and confusion. Leah didn't respond. The black creatures crawled towards the lounge. The flickering of the lights made Ryan capable of seeing their shadows, as well as making the whole situation more discomforting. The shadow of the creatures advanced deliberately towards them. The dreadful noise of dogs being beaten by someone increased, as well as the weird smell with every step they took. "We're going to die," he whispered. "Not we. Only you are going to die." "What do you mean? I'm already dead." "What? No, you're not." "I am," she said as she pulled her hand closer to her mouth. Ryan shrieked when he saw Leah bite off a piece of meat from her hand. She shoved her nails into her face and peeled the skin off all the way down to her lips. Blood covered her hand, and the peeled-off skin swung to the left as she bent her head. Ryan almost tripped over when he stood up and dashed towards the front door without thinking. The lights went off and made it impossible for him to comprehend. He fought to unlock the front door but failed. He darted to the guest room and locked himself up. He scrutinized the room as the lights turned on. The first aid kit was launched at the window by him as an attempt to break the glass. But it was hopeless. The aid kit wasn't strong enough. The door swung open. Leah was standing there. She enormously smiled as she licked her bloodied fingers. The creatures stood silent on either side. He nictitated and observed Leah a few inches closer to him. She snapped her finger, and the two creatures took a step forward. They transformed into a black blob as if they had just melted. The smell of rotting fish joined the environment. The black substance began to boil. It turned baby pink, then blood red, and then finally skin. The sensation of uneasiness caused Ryan's bones to shiver. It grew taller as the unpleasant sound of someone squeezing a mayonnaise pouch became louder and louder. It finally built up into two human bodies. Two men. They both weren't following me, Ryan. They are my protectors. What do you want? And what are you? The thing that matters is what I want, not what or who I am. I'm here to take you with me. To take you to my world. What makes you think I'll come with you, you monster? An atrocious laugh spread across the room. And within a blink of an eye, she stood a few inches away from Ryan. I'm not a monster, dear. You are. You, humans, are the actual monsters. We relish devouring perfect souls, and you humans make us beg for them. She said, moving closer as every word came out of her mouth. Ryan was forced against the wall. Every single one of our kind starved to death because they couldn't discover the perfect souls to consume. Why are humans so self-centered? Why can't they sacrifice some souls for us? What are they going to do with those perfect souls? Sharing is caring, you know. She put her hand up in the air, and the glass drew towards her. She clenched her fist hard, forcing the glass to break. Come with me, Ryan. This hideous world doesn't deserve you. You're too precious. She leaned forward. I assure you it doesn't hurt that much. Just close your eyes, and let me gently and delicately slit your throat. The stink of the garbage emitted by her mouth almost made him vomit. He didn't know what to do. He could just surrender himself. He snatched the broken glass from Aaliyah's hand. I'm not gonna go anywhere with you, he asserted. You can't kill me. He smirked and stabbed his heart. The blood fountain poured out from his heart. Blood surrounded him as he fell to the ground. He heard Leah yelling just before he closed his eyes. Forever. I had a tough time sleeping that night. After all the stress I endured today, it felt like I was losing my mind. It just felt like my mind was foggy. After a long 12-hour shift on my construction job while in 101-degree weather, the last thing I needed now was no sleep. My body is tired, but my mind just keeps wandering. After many moments of tossing and turning, I got up and go down my old creaky stairs to go to the kitchen for a drink. I grabbed a cup and started to fill my cup up with ice from my refrigerator. I then switched the settings on my fridge and began to fill my cup up with water. I began drinking my water and started to get relief. I looked at the clock on my microwave and the time read 1:09 a.m. Sigh. I have to be at work at 8 in the morning. My thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a loud thud coming from my kitchen window, which was adjacent from my fridge. I paused and looked around to check my surroundings. Nothing in the house seemed like it fell over. A couple of moments go by and nothing happens. I chalk it up as my restless mind playing games on me. I turn away from the window while sipping my cup until another loud thud came from the window again. I almost choked on my water from shock. The thud was somehow louder than before. It sounded as if something was purposely hitting against my window. I turned around slowly and started crouch walking towards the window. As I approached the window, I paused for a moment. Really only because I am freaked out. My window has a blind over it. I was too much of a coward to pull back the window blind. Until another loud thud came from the window. I began to panic. I put my hand on my window blind and took a deep breath. I tell myself that I need to know what is making that noise this late in the night for peace of mind. I make a little crack in the window blind, just enough for one of my eyes to see. I began looking out into the darkness of the night. Nothing but forest trees slightly waving in the night's breeze. A sigh of relief overcame me and I felt relaxed. I looked at the clock on the microwave again and it was 1:15 a.m. I came to the realization that it has to be my mind. Working 60 hours a week is starting to take its toll on my mind. While thinking, I heard another loud thud. Again, from the same window in my kitchen. Maybe it is some kids trying to play a prank. I walked to the window confidently and pulled back the whole blind. What I saw haunts me to this day. As I began falling to the ground from fear, I saw a man that was in his late 30s, 40s. He was shirtless with a bloody knife and was holding a dead cat by the nape of its neck. While in shock, the man looked at me and made eye contact. The shocked and horrified look on my face must have brought some sort of joy to the man. As he began to tilt his head ever so slightly and grin widely, the man then used the cat to strike my window. Thud. It was the same sound as before. I finally snapped myself out of my shock and began to stumble to my feet. Then, the man began screaming like a maniac while slicing a portion of his right pec. He licked the blood from the knife he was holding and started screaming again. I booked it out the kitchen and up the stairs to my bedroom and locked the door. I began breathing heavily. I frantically tried searching for my cell phone. I tore up my whole bedroom and found nothing. The man continued screaming loudly, but this time it sounds as if the man is going around the perimeter of my home. I remembered my phone is plugged on the charger in my kitchen by the fridge. I put my ear to the door of my bedroom to try to pinpoint where the man is. It still sounded like the man was outdoors. I unlocked my bedroom door and ran down the stairs. I went to the kitchen and saw blood and broken glass everywhere. The man is still screaming, but now it sounds clearer. The man is shouting, "Blood, blood, I wonder what your blood tastes like," followed by deranged laughing. As I panicked, I spotted my phone and grabbed it. Then, I heard another thud followed by the sound of glass breaking from the adjacent room by the kitchen. I ran up the stairs to my room and locked my bedroom door. The screaming sounded closer now. I could tell that this lunatic was in my house. I began to shed tears as I typed the password in my phone. Under so much stress I accidentally got locked out of my phone. I wiped the tears from my eyes and looked at my phone closer. The phone screen read "Too many password attempts, try back in 1 minute." I now heard heavy footsteps in the house, followed by glass and other objects being moved around. I put my ear to my bedroom door and I can distinctly tell that the man is in the kitchen. I hear the man open and shut the fridge while laughing to himself. I can hear muffled talking but can't make out what is being said. I look at my phone and the message disappeared. I began to slowly type my 4-digit password in. I pulled up the phone app and my body froze up. I heard a creak come from the stairwell. I just override my fear and hide under the bed while dialing 911. My phone began to dial. Then, I heard more creaks on the stairs. Moments went by. I felt so scared. Then silence. The operator broke the silence by saying, "Hello 911, what's your emergency?" I began to whisper that I need help until I hear a loud noise come from one of the upstairs rooms. I continue to explain to the operator the situation at hand. The operator tells me the police should be there in 3 minutes. I slowly crawl from under the bed and barricade my bedroom door with my cheap IKEA dresser. I pushed the dresser up to the door but it tilted slightly forward and knocked against the door. I then heard loud steps come from down the hall. The footsteps ended right in front of my bedroom door. Then, silence. I laid on the ground and slowly crawled on my belly back to my hiding spot under my bed. While making my way to the bed, the silence was broken by a loud, almost beastly roar. My chest began to hurt. Loud thunderous bangs started. I finally made it under my bed. It sounded like the man was throwing himself against the door. He began shouting, "I want your blood. I want it. I want it." While he kept banging against the door and trying the doorknob. I could see clearly from under my bed and I could see about an inch under the doorway. The man was barefoot. I could see my IKEA dresser trying to hold firm but to no avail. The dresser tumbled out from the door. Now, the door was just my last line of defense. The man continued to scream and roar like he was possessed or something. Siren noises could finally be heard over the man's screaming. The sirens sounded close. But as quickly as I felt relieved, it was soon met with dismay and dread when the man finally busted through my door. I put my hands over my mouth to try to muffle my breathing. The man starts sniffing around like some sort of animal. It reminded me of a dog sniffing around a tree. The man suddenly stopped sniffing and ran to my bedroom closet. He opens the doors and started throwing all the items out of it. Clothes, shoes, containers, etc. The sirens sounded like they were in front of my house. I heard 2 distinct door slams. The man continued screaming, "I want your blood." The man then walked over about 5 feet to my bed. I could see that he is standing right in front of me. I can't help but glance at his feet. His feet were dirty and bloody. But, among the dirt and blood, I noticed that there were markings on his feet that seemed to be done with a sharp object. The language looked like some ancient text. I pulled my phone out and snapped a picture of his feet just in case I died so the police could decipher the markings on his feet. But I had forgot I left the flash on. Once I snapped the picture, the man saw the flash and dropped to his knees and lowered his head down to look under the bed. We instantly made eye contact and the man grabbed my right forearm and pulled me from under the bed in one swift motion. His grasp was so tight that my arm went numb. No way, I thought. I weigh around 235 pounds. I began screaming and the man drew back his knife and plunged it right into my gut. I began to bleed profusely. My body felt cold. I looked into the man's eyes as I started to fade in and out of consciousness. Both of the man's eyes were pitch black. I suddenly heard 2 sets of footsteps running up the stairs. It was 2 cops. The cops started issuing orders. The man pulled the knife from my gut and took a half step towards the cops. He was instantly met with a hail of gunshots. The man crumbled to his knees and then falls to his left side facing me. The man reached over and touched my blood-soaked shirt. I saw my blood on his hand as I was struggling to stay conscious. The man moved his now blood-soaked hand to his lips and licked the blood from it. He grinned, and then tried to reach over to me again before letting out a huge sigh and dying on my bedroom floor. I passed out. I woke up in the hospital and was immediately met with intense pain in my abdomen. Doctors and cops rush into my room. The doctors tell me that I just came out of surgery due to a 6-inch puncture wound to my abdomen. The cops started to question me about what happened at my home. One policeman showed me pictures of the dead man's body that was in my house. I noticed that there are words written several times all over his chest, back, and arms with the text being no bigger than half an inch. I asked one of the policemen to hand me my phone. He handed it to me and I pulled my photo app up and showed them the picture I took of the weird markings on the man's feet. The text matched the words that were engraved on the man's body. One policeman types the phrase in his phone. They are puzzled and I ask them what does it say. In Latin it says sanguis est anima vivens, roughly translating to the blood is life.